Come on, everyone. Let's look at the first question. First of all, if you look at the first question on the screen, you will find that it has no numbers. So this should not be a math-related TPA question. It is a verbal PPA question. What is our first reaction? Our first reaction is to look at the question first. Let's take a look at what this question is about. Don't read the article first. Why don't you read the article first? The length of this article is longer than CR. If it is a foreigner, I think it doesn't matter. Foreigners read faster, right? It's their mother tongue. For them, if they read the article first, they can absorb everything, organize it, and recite it to you. So it doesn't matter to them. But for us, just reading is very slow. When we combine information, our brains will be confused. If you ask me to read the article first, I may forget what the article is about when I see the question. How can I think? So at this time, we have to go from the shallow to the deep. We transition from less information to more information so that it is easier to filter. So for us, English is not our mother tongue. So I suggest you read the stationery first. He said, okay, this is it. To define the first box, the name of the first box is with affiliated institutions. So what should we choose here? Under what circumstances does the government of a certain country allow a bank to share the customer's account balance with related affiliated institutions? What is an affiliated institution? For example, if China CITIC Bank is the main body, it may have China CITIC Insurance, China Life, or China CITIC Property and Casualty Insurance, or some other affiliated institutions of China CITIC, the affiliated institutions of the entire consortium, right? Can it share your account? The hypothesis is almost the same as before, except that the other box is to choose whether the government allows you to share with non-affiliated organizations, which means it doesn't necessarily have to be with CITIC. It could be with some e-commerce groups outside to share your information. For example, CTIC shares it with a certain company, CTIC shares it with a fraud group, etc., right? Well, let's first understand this question. Next, do we go directly to read the article? No, I suggest you read these 5 options first. You can first understand what the situation he is talking about is. Then either notify the customer first, or the customer does not clearly refuse, or the customer has clearly expressed agree or have no idea. You can roughly know what these 5 situations look like. You don't need to read them carefully, just take a quick look. This is not for you to choose. It just lets you know what direction we will think about. Of course, if the options are too long, just read 1 or 2. Then the third step is to read the article. When we read the article, we first read it. It says that X, the government, restricts what it says. It restricts how banks can share customer information with other institutions. Then there is an example that unless the customer explicitly gives permission today, there is no such thing. Non-public information, such as account balances and credit records, can be shared with these non-affiliated institutions. Do you need to take notes? I would suggest that you don't take notes for now. In addition, banks must allow customers to prohibit the sharing of even public available information about them, such as listed telephone numbers, with non-paying institutions. Banks must also give customers this right. Customers have the right to prohibit others from sharing certain of their public information, such as telephone numbers, with non-paying institutions. In this way, the bank must honor any decision that the customer makes in these cases. The bank has an obligation to respect the honor, which means to honor the request. For example, if the customer has any request, the bank must honor the request. It means that banks have an obligation to fulfill these requirements of customer. However, the above-mentioned restrictions will not limit the sharing of this type of information with any affiliated institution. That is, if the other party is an affiliated institution, then the above forms are not a big deal. All information can be shared with affiliated institutions, except passwords, which must not be shared, even with affiliated institutions. The government also requires banks to share this information with colleagues in various agencies. Let me ask you one thing. You will find that this whole article is very scattered. It does not describe a plan or purpose to you, nor does it describe a normal. Instead, the story is more like telling you one sentence at a time, telling you this and that and this and that. In real life, this is very annoying. It feels like we used the credit card today and found that it was strange that there was no reward or that the credit card was reversed. What should we do? We need to look at the terms and conditions to see if there are any very fine words written by Prince and Condition Credit Card Company. Then we can put all these fragmented information together. Or it feels like today the insurance company does not compensate you. If you say that something happened to me and the insurance company says, sorry, they won't pay compensation, you might ask why they won't pay compensation. You need to go back and look at the contract line by line. This is the key point. You need to imagine what kind of situation this is. This is the first step of our substitution method. So everyone, let's answer this question again. What does this question emphasize? It emphasizes under what circumstances does the government allow a bank to share the customer's account balance with its affiliated institutions? Under what circumstances can it share accounts with non-affiliated institutions? Balance, by the way, I found that we can actually put ourselves into the role of a customer who is worried that someone knows about my account balance. Is there any problem with the bank? Is the bank legal? We put ourselves into the role of a customer. Then when we look back at the text of the contract, you will find that we only care about the account balance, because the question in this question is written very carefully. It only talks about the account balance. But we just saw a lot of information such as phone numbers, passwords, etc., which are not. It is important. So our focus is only on the account balance. Now let's look back and we will find that, okay, let's put ourselves in a position first. Which grid should we solve first? In fact, to be honest, both can be solved. Why are the two independent of each other? One is affiliated and the other is non-affiliated. The two situations are independent of each other. You can solve either one first. Let's assume that we will solve the first one today. Let's imagine that today, suppose I go to Fubon and I have a Fubon account. As a result, my account balance is known by Fubon Life Insurance. I am very angry. Is it legal? I want to find out whether it is legal. At this time, we look back at the article and find that the first sentence talks about the account balance, right? It talked about the account. He said that unless the client has explicit permission, such non-public information as account balances cannot be shared with what? Shared with non-affiliated institutions. It seems that although I just chose to solve the first column first, this sentence seems to clearly talk about the second column. If I find that the information I read clearly talks about another column, I can also jump back and solve the second column first. So here I read that unless the client has explicit permission, these account language, this kind of information cannot be shared with non-affiliated institutions. So in other words, under what circumstances can it be shared with non-affiliated institutions? It is when the customer has given permission. So in this box, is it all situations? It is not that it is okay as long as the customer does not prohibit it. It is not that it is only when the customer has given explicit permission, right? So in the second box, we will choose the fourth option. Then, of course, we will continue to look at what the second sentence says if it is an affiliated institution. The second sentence says that banks should allow customers to prohibit sharing of public information such as phone numbers. But this is different from what we just said. The first one has nothing to do with the account balance we just talked about. The second one has nothing to do with the affiliates we just talked about. It is not important that we choose affiliates now. Banks should respect customers. This is also not important. The fourth sentence is that the above restrictions will not affect anything. It will not affect sharing with affiliates. Then it says that all sharing with affiliates is allowed. So we have confirmed one thing, that is some of the restrictions we just talked about, which said that you must get the customer's consent before sharing, are talking about the situation of non-affiliated institutions. If it is the situation of an affiliate today, then all situations are allowed. So we have confirmed this place on the left. What should I choose? The choice is option A. If you put yourself in the role and think about it, you will find that when you read this clause, if I am shared with an inexplicable organization, I will feel that it is wrong when I read the first sentence. You are breaking the law. You did not get my consent. The clause says that unless I agree, you can share it with some non-affiliated organizations, some inexplicable Asaburu organizations. So I know that the choice here is whether I agree or not. If I am shared with an affiliated organization today, I will see the following part and say, okay, it seems that the treaty says that although there are restrictions in the previous part, these restrictions do not seem to be in line with the agreement. They are just standardized non-affiliated organizations. If it is an affiliated organization, it doesn't matter. If that's the case, then it's okay. So you can share in all situations, right? So what's the method we use for this question? First, look at the question and the options to understand the direction of our thinking. We need to find situations where we can share information, then bring in a role when reading the article. Bring in a role to understand that I am a person whose information has been leaked. When you look at the question again, pay attention to the key points in the question. Have you noticed that the information needed to solve this question is only 2 sentences, which are the 2 sentences I marked in yellow, right? The article deliberately stuffed them in for you. There are a lot of inexplicable things like phone numbers, passwords, banks, whether to respect banks, etc. These are all junk information. Have you noticed that only less than half of the information in the entire article is tested? How can you identify less than half of the information? You will find out what we did. When we were thinking just now, we didn't think directly. We didn't think directly after reading the article. Instead, we came back to check the details of the question. It is certain that the details of the question asked about the customer's account balance. So what I am telling you now is how to avoid junk information. The method is called reading the question carefully and making good use of the substitution method. When you don't read the question carefully or don't use the substitution method, it is very likely that you will mix all the information in the article together and think about it. This is our first question. Let's look at the second question. The second question seems to have fewer words. But does having fewer words really mean that we can relax? In fact, it is not necessarily. Let's take a look at what we need to do in the first step. First, read the question. The question asks you to choose one or two. Then the key is to complete the fill in the blank. Then he said that completing the fill in the blank is based on the information in the article. It allows us to choose one on the side that can be inferred. Of course, this is not a complete question. Why does this question not say any actual content? Is it right? It just asks us to complete the sentence. Then we have to come back at this time. We can't start from the first place because this sentence is not actually a question. This sentence has no meaning. We just said that it has no meaning. So the real question should actually be this sentence. So we should look at this sentence again. We look at questions to know which direction we should think in. But the question just now did not give us such ability. So we really need to look at the sentence, okay? He said, the speaker's statement do not indicate that. Pay attention. There are often such negative statements in Gmail. Of course, the title will be kind enough to mark it for you, but you have to be more careful. You will find that when you have a habit of looking at questions, the speed is particularly slow because questions are the core of all Gmail questions. I have seen many candidates who have difficulty answering questions because they handle questions carelessly. They don't even know what the questions are asking. Of course, there will be obstacles. He said that the speaker's statement does not mean that the duty to something is ever less important than any other duties. In addition, GZ said that the speaker's statement does not mean that the duty to something is more important than other duties. Is it right in Gong Sang Xiao? Here, we still don't know who should do it first. Who should do it first is what we decide last. Let's look at the article first and then think about it while reading the article. Let's look at it first. He said that a certain theory related to ethics tells us that everyone has 6 basic obligations. The first is not to cause harm to others. The second is to promote public interest. The third is to behave noble. The fourth is fairness and justice. The fifth is to obey authority. The sixth is loyalty and eternal loyalty. There are 6 obligations. According to this theory, what if these 6 virtues and 6 obligations conflict? What should we do? For example, one moment you have to be loyal. Another moment you have to obey authority. Another moment you have to be fair and just. And another moment you have to be loyal. If you find that there is what to do when there is a conflict, later he said that avoid causing harm to others is more important than being fair and acting honorably. Avoid causing harm to others. And what is more important than behaving honorably or fighting a fair battle? And what is more important than maintaining fairness and obeying authority? What is more important than promoting justice and loyalty? But what is less important than behaving honorably and obeying authority? Wow, did you find out what this article makes us feel? Although it has fewer words, the information is still scattered. Although there is little information, it feels like just throwing some scattered information to you like garbage. What should we do? At this time, don't forget that our process is the same. Don't think about it first. Reread this article and come back to read the question again. The question will give you a clear direction and use it. At this time, you should use the substitution method and decide the order to do it first. Right? Reread the question again. The question says, the speaker's statement do not indicate the duty to something is ever less important than any other duty. He doesn't think so. Pay attention. He doesn't think that a certain project is less important. I'll write it for you. He doesn't think it is less important than others. One is less important and the other is, what is it? I don't think evil is more important than anything else. Can we simplify this sentence? Because when we see double negation, this logic is very difficult to think about. We should put ourselves in that role to solve it. If I am the speaker, what does it mean when I say I don't think something is more important or less important than another? For example, I don't think money is more important than health, family relationships, and other characteristics. It means that I think money is the least important, which means that it ranks last. Then the other character, then if I don't think something is more important than others, what does it mean? Less important than any other, that means he ranks first. So at this time, we can convert it into an easy to think angle. I don't think 2 is more important than any other. 2 is this important. And I don't think 1 is less important than any other. Then at this time, 1 is the most important. So we have to find the first and last ranked, the first ranked person is not less important than anyone else. No one ranks behind him. It's that simple. Then we know who should solve the 6 tasks in the article first. You will find that these two are actually independent of each other. They are independent in ranking. Logically, who is the cause and who is the effect, etc., are 2 separate situations to consider. So you can solve either one first, you can solve one first, or you can solve 2 first. You can even try to sort them. No matter which one we solve first, we will need to sort them in the future. For example, we solve one first and we will fix it. When we want to find the most important one, we will see who is the first in the ranking. So at this time, we have to start to sort it out. We just finished reading the article and know that there's a lot of information. We use a pen to grasp a chain. Let's start from here. The first one is avoiding causing harms. We use CC to compare what is more important than C. F or A is more important. Actually, you don't have to draw it into a chain. You can even start with the method of elimination. Why? Because we are looking for the most important thing. Since F and A are already considered unimportant, we can delete them in advance. F and A have already been entered, so at this time we can already delete F in advance. Acting fair should actually be A, so we should delete acting honorable first. Then the second sentence says that fairness is more important than obeying authority. So this place confirms that obeying authority must not be the first. Promoting the common good is more important than being loyal. So being loyal is not the first. Then it says that promoting common good is less important than acting honorably or obeying authority. So it is confirmed. Promoting the common good itself has lost to others. So at this time, we can delete it because it is less important than others. So in the end, we will choose the first option in the first box. This is faster than sorting because you are sure that you only need to find the most important one, so you can directly delete the person who lost. Then you look at the second option. The second option is not to think that he is more important than anyone else, so he must have lost to everyone. So when we read the article, we can also be sure that as long as he has won someone, we can exclude him. Of course, there is no need to think about the first option because the first option confirms that his situation is different, so we won't think about it. First, let's look at the first sentence. Note that we are looking for the last place. So as long as the narrative says that he beats others, we will not consider him. So avoiding causing harm to others has been ruled out by us. Then being fair is more important. Being fair can be shot in vain because we want the last place, so he didn't beat anyone. Then promoting the common good is more important. We want the last place, so promoting the common good can be said goodbye. Then less important than acting honorably or obeying authority, we find out that he beat these two, so these two must not be the last place. So acting honorably and obeying authority, these two can be said goodbye. So in the end, the answer will be loyal, which is option E. So the second option we will choose is F. Sorry, because it is not option E. The last one is F. Because there are 6 options, you can redo this question later. You can try it yourself to see whether it is faster to read the article and then draw a chain by yourself, or to use the method we just talked about, which is to fix it once and then delete an option. Have you found that no matter which method you use, there is a principle that it is very important to examine the question? You can't just keep the sentence in its original form, but you have to think from your own perspective. If I am a speaker, I will say, I don't think this thing is more important than other things. What do I want to do? What is my attitude? I don't think this thing is more important than other things. I don't want it to be the last. I think it is the last. I think it is the worst. Only when you stand at the perspective of substitution method to interpret the questions in depth can you know the direction of solving the questions. This direction is exactly the same as our principle and method in the previous question. So you can see that we just did it one by one. We did this side first and then this side. In this way, the most important thing about reading a question is not to quickly read the options or to quickly delete or read the article. In fact, it is to interpret the question. So why do I read the question twice? That's why. Now, let's look at the third question. What does the third question look at first? First, look at the question and the options. So we will focus on this first. It says to choose a statement in the following table. If it is true, it can strengthen the above conclusion and strengthen the researcher's conclusion. Then choose a statement. If it is true, it will weaken. The conclusion of the researchers is very similar to the CRT we talked about. Now, let's look at the options. The text is really too long. The length of this option is really equivalent to the length of the CRT. So you don't need to go through all 5 or 6 options at once like just now, because we are not looking at them to solve the problem. We are just looking at them to know what our thinking direction is. So I would suggest that you can first pick 1 or 2 options and take a look. You can see that I wrote peak here, which means to peak. So he wants us to support or weaken the conclusion, right? Let's take a peek at what the options say. The options are written like a normal CRT. That is North America. Children aged 7 to 13 find it harder to answer questions than children of the same age in other places. Another option is that none of these 5-year-old North American children have ever learned geometry. So although we don't know what he is asking or what the question is about, at least we are mentally prepared. This question may be related to an educational study, a psychological study, or a study related to learning effects. With such mental preparation and knowing that he is asking about weakening or strengthening, you will be more likely to get into the situation when reading the article. Let's first look at what the article says. In a study, in the experiment, the researchers picked simple geometry-related questions and gave them to children from different backgrounds. One group of students was composed of children aged 7 to 13 from a place called M. What is this place? They were from a primitive tribe in the Amazon. They actually had no geometry training. There were no geometry courses in the Amazon primitive tribe, but their speed and accuracy in answering were much faster than those in France. Compared with French children aged 7 to 13, the French children who'd learned geometry performed much better than those in France. So at the same age, one is an Amazon tribe child who has not learned geometry, and the other is a French child who has learned geometry. They are surprisingly the same in terms of accuracy and speed in writing geometry problems. In addition, there is another paragraph of information added on the right back. In comparison, 5-year-old American children from the United States and Canada, performed quite poorly on these questions, even worse than what we just talked about. So in the end, the researchers concluded that some geometry-related knowledge is innate, so it is native, which means that we want to have it from birth. Yes, but these geometry-related abilities will only gradually emerge after the age of 5. Do you have any ideas after reading this? First, if you don't have any ideas, you can just look back at the question. In the question, we are determined to target the conclusion of the researchers. So the focus should be on whether the above information can allow us to determine that geometric knowledge is innate, but will only appear after the age of 5. Then what role do we bring in? This is different. If today is strengthen, I will bring in the role of the researcher. If today is weaken, I will bring in the role of someone who wants to attack the researcher's role. Because the position of this question is different, the roles you need to bring into play are different. If it is strengthen, it means to bring yourself into play with the researcher. How can I prove that my conclusion is correct? If it is weaken, it means to attack the researcher's role. Now, let's think about which one should be done first. In fact, these two are independent of each other. There is no dependence between them. It is not about who decides first and who decides later. It is not a cause and effect. It is a completely contrasting attitude. So in fact, you can do both sides separately. It doesn't matter which side you do, but the habit is weakened first because it is easier and more intuitive for us humans to find loopholes in others than to protect ourselves. So I would choose to use weaken first. I would wonder what this person is doing. He said he wanted to prove that geometric ability only appeared after the age of 5. What evidence did he use? Because when we are doing logic, like in my middle school courses, I would emphasize that your conclusion should be followed by evidence. You have to think about what evidence he used and then think about how his evidence points to his conclusion. Your conclusion is that geometric ability only appears after the age of 5. Tell me your evidence. And let's see, what is the evidence? The evidence says that it is because you see that these 7-year-olds perform very well, while the 5-year-olds in the United States perform very poorly. Your evidence is this. I let you see the 7-year-olds in France and the 7-year-olds in the Amazon tribe. They all perform very well. Then I let you see the 5-year-olds perform very poorly. The 5-year-olds in the United States perform very poorly. So you conclude that it is related to age, but it is not right. You took people from different countries. Is it possible that it is related to the country? Is it possible that Amazon and France are born with math? It is better. That's right. But it's possible that the genes of Americans are worse, right? So there may be other factors, right? There may be national factors, ethnic factors, and genetic factors, but in general, it is not necessarily related to age. Then, when we look at the school, we will find that you already have an idea in your mind. I want to find a comparison between the red area and the blue area. In addition to age, is there any other reason to explain why they are worse at math? Let's look at the small road. First, You actually put them between 7 and 13 years old, and they are still bad at math. The Amazon tribesmen are still here, which proves that it has nothing to do with age. It's just that Americans are bad at math. When Americans grow up from 5 years old to 7 to 13 years old, they are still bad at math. This points to our expectation, right? We just said that Americans may be born bad at math. It won't change if they are put aside for a few years, so it has nothing to do with age. So this option will be retained by us. Then the second 5-year-old child has never learned geometry. But the problem is, what we just compared with him is that we compared the blue with the red. There are also people in the red who have never learned geometry. The 5-year-old children in the Amazon tribe have never learned geometry. Then the 5-year-old children here and the 7 to 13-year-old children in the Amazon have never learned geometry. My 5-year-old child told me that he has never learned geometry. Doesn't this prove that the relationship is age? Let's reiterate it twice. The Amazon children over 7 years old in the red have never learned geometry. Their performance ratio is good. If you say that you have not learned a few subjects and you are also 5 years old, then it is not related to whether you have learned a few subjects. It is definitely age. We will stop this option and put option C aside. It says that the difficulties encountered by the 5-year-old children of the Amazon tribe in answering questions are the same as those encountered by the 5-year-old children of the United States. Doesn't it further prove that it has nothing to do with race, but more to do with age? If all the older Amazon children around the world, including those who you just said performed better, actually performed about the same as the American children when they were 5 years old, then it means, what does it mean? Regardless of race, it's not a racial issue. It's not the difference between North American and Amazonian tribes. It's the age difference. As long as the age is the same, everyone's performance will be the same, so this option is not unconstitutional. Then the fourth option says that the questions given by researchers to 5-year-old children and 10-year-old children from 7 to 13 years old are actually the same questions. But my question is, if it's the same question, then how can we weaken it, right? What we want to find is another different variation, that is another new and different variation besides age. So if you give the same questions and you don't add any other variables, for example, if you give the variable that the questions given to American children are more difficult, then it can indeed be weakened.